Hi, everybody. We are going to talk about the next type of way to display data today, and that is called a dot plot. It's similar to a box and whisker plot in that it's a way that we can categorize the data that we've collected. And basically, it's also on a number line, and so we can see it very easily. The difference between this and a box and whisker plot is that we can actually see each data value. Okay, so this one has its pros because of that. So let's take a look at what this says. When given a set of data, it is often easier to read when categorized and displayed on a plot. A dot plot is a display that uses a number line and dots to show data. So in example 1, it says, Karen randomly surveyed some classmates to see how many books each of them read over the summer. The results are shown in the table below. Create a dot plot of her data and then answer the questions that follow. Okay, so we can see in our table here the name of each student and how many books they read over the summer. And so what we're going to do is we are going to plot all of those data values on our number line. Okay, so we'll go right in order. So it says Brian read 4 books. So we're going to place a dot at 4. Tessa read 3. Lily read 2. Luke read 4. So if there's someone else who also read 4, we stack our dots like this. Haley read 3, so we have another dot at 3. Niles read 6. Sammy read 5. $18 for CJ. 3 for Samaya. 16 for Olivia. 4 for Maddie. And 4 for Sean. Okay, so that is what a completed dot plot looks like. So the reason why we're doing creating and analyzing in one day is because the creating part is pretty straightforward. Okay, we're just plotting our points. The analyzing part is where it's a little bit trickier. So the first thing we want to do is we want to find the mean of our data. So if you think back to our day on measures of central tendency, the mean is the average. And in order to find the average, we add up all of these numbers and we divide by how many numbers we added. So one way we can do this by looking at the dot plot is to add all of our dots together. Okay, so I'm going to start by saying, all right, I'm going to add 2. But then I can see that there are 3 dots on 3. So instead of writing plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, I'm going to say plus 3 times 3. Same thing for 4. Instead of writing plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, I'll say plus 4 times 4. And then there's a 5, there's a 6, a 16, and an 18. Okay, so if we go ahead and we get the sum of all of those data values, and remember you are allowed to use a calculator here, so feel free, we should get that the total is 72. Okay, so the second step of finding the mean is dividing by how many numbers we added. So what you want to do is you want to go back and add up how many dots there were, or you can count from the table how many students were there. Okay, and there's going to be 12, which means our mean is 6. Okay. Part B says to find the median. So again, thinking back to when we talked about what a median was, it was the middle data value when everything was in order from least to greatest. So we wouldn't want to use the table that we were given to figure out the median because those numbers aren't in order. So we do actually want to use our dot plot to figure this out. And so what we're going to do is we are going to cross off the dots from the ends and find the middle dot. Okay, so I'm going to cross off the 2 with the 18, 3 with 16, another 3 with 6, another 3 with 5, and then a 4 with a 4, and I'm going to see that there are 2 left in the middle. Okay, so the 2 left in the middle, if I find the average of them, 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 divided by 2 is 4, so I'm going to be getting 4 for my median. Just like if there was 2 left in the middle in your list, you would find the average of the 2. But in this case, they're both 4, so we know the median is going to be 4. Okay, to find the mode, we are looking for which data value appears the most often. So this is pretty easy to see because the dot plot is a great visual of which number appears the most often. So we can see that 4 has the most dots on our dot plot, and so that means that is the mode. Okay, to find the range. The range is the difference between the highest number and the lowest number. And so the highest number on my dot plot is 18. The lowest number is 2. So our range would be 16. Okay, for E, we are being asked to find the first quartile. So on the day that we learned how to create box and whisker plots, we talked about how the first quartile was the median of the first half of our data. So when we're looking at our dot plot, we have to do exactly that. We have to find the middle dot in the first half of our data. Now, the first thing we have to figure out is where is the first half of the data and where is the second half of the data. So I want you to go to where we found our 2 middle dots. Okay, now because there were 2 in the middle, we didn't actually use one of those dots as our median. So when I go to split my data into 2 halves, I'm going to treat my median as if it was in between those 2 dots. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just box in the first half of my data. Okay, so what you can do to make sure that you've kind of like boxed that in correctly is count and make sure you have the same number of dots in the first half as the second half. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dots I have in the first half of my data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I have 6 dots in the second half of my data. So I know that I've split this in half correctly. So now we're ready to find the middle of the first half of my data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross off from the ends again. So that dot with this one, that one with that one, and now I have these 2 left in the middle. So what that means is that my first quartile is 3. Okay, so we're going to do the same exact thing to find the third quartile. So we've already split our data in half, and so we know that we have the same number of dots on the second half of our dot plot. And so again, we're going to cross off from the ends. So this dot with this one, this dot with this one, and now I'm left with these 2 dots in the middle of my second half. So to find the median, I would find the middle of 5 and 6, which we could do by adding 5 plus 6, which is 11, and dividing by 2. Or you could know that between 5 and 6 is 5.5. So our third quartile is 5.5. Okay, last question here, find the interquartile range. So remember, the interquartile range is when we subtract our third quartile with our first quartile. So our third quartile we just got was 5.5. Our first quartile was 3, which gives us an IQR, interquartile range, of 2.5. Okay, let's move on to example 2. The frequency table below shows the frequency of test scores of students in Mrs. Hayward's first and third period math class. classes. Create 2 separate dot plots of the data and answer the questions that follow. Okay, so we can see we have first period test scores and third period test scores. So on this first number line, we're going to plot the first period test scores. I'm just going to label this. Okay, so the table is showing us that the test score is on the left and the frequency is on the right, which means one person got an 80, one person got an 81, and so on. And so that's how we're going to know how many dots to put. So one person got an 80, one person got an 81, one got an 83, one got an 85, one got an 86, two got an 89, so I need 2 points there, 190 and 191. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the third period test scores. So I'm going to label this. Okay, so here we go. 283, so let's put 2 points there. 384, 189, 191, 192, and 193. Okay, so some questions to answer about this. How many students from first period took the test? Okay, well, to figure out how many students took the test, we just have to see how many scores there were, how many total dots are on our dot plot. So if we count them up, I'm getting that there are 9. 9 total students took the test. Let's do the same thing for B. So this now is asking how many students from third period took the test. So again, we're going to add up how many dots are on our dot plot. And I'm getting 9 for there also. Okay, which class has the higher mean and by how much? So again, mean is the average, and in order to figure that out, I'm going to have to add all of my numbers and divide, in this case, by 9, because that's how many I'm going to add up for each class. So I'm just going to write down here first period versus third period. So let's get a total for first period. So we're going to add all of our dots, their values. So 80 plus 81 plus 83 plus 85 and so on. So go ahead and type that into your calculator and let's get a total and make sure we agree here. Okay, so for my total, I'm getting 774. Hopefully you all agree with me at home. And I'm going to divide that by 9 because that's how many numbers I added. And so I'm getting that the mean for period 1 is 86. Okay, so we have to do the same thing for period 3. So let's go ahead and let's add all of those scores together. So remember, because there's more than one dot at some of these, you could say 83 times 2 plus 84 times 3 plus 89 plus 91 and so on. Okay, so for that total, I'm getting 783, which again, I'm going to divide by 9, because there was 9 students, and I'm going to get 87 for that mean. So which class has the higher mean? Third period. And by how much? By 1. Okay, part D, which class has the higher median and by how much? So same thing, but now comparing the medians. So I'm just going to write my 2 periods down here. Okay, so remember, to get your median, we're going to be crossing off from the ends of our dot plot. So let me just change my color here for us. Okay, so when we cross off from the ends, we're going to cross off 80 with 91, 81 with 90, 83 with 89, 85 with 89, and we're left with 1 in the middle, 86. And so that makes sense that we were left with 1 in the middle because there were an odd number of dots. So anytime you have an odd number of dots, you will have 1 point in the middle. If there's an even number of dots, you're going to have 2 left in the middle, and then you have to find the average of those 2. Okay, so 86 is the median for period 1. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for period 3. We need to find the median test score. So we're going to cross off from the ends here. And I am getting 84 for my median of period 3. Okay, so which class has the higher median? First period. And by how much? By 2. Okay, last question about these double dot plots here. What is the mode of each class? All right, so mode, which score was the most common? So for period 1, if I go back up here, which score has the most dots on it? 89. So 89 would be our mode for period 1. For third period, the score with the most dots would be 84. So 84 was the most common score for third period. All right, we have one more example. Oh, just kidding. We have a lot more examples. This is a long lesson. You guys have to stick with me. You can always pause it and come back. Okay, so example 3. The dot plots below show the number of books read by some 7th and 8th grade Blue Team students during 1 month. Find the mean number of books read for each grade level. All right. So I'm going to split this here. So we're finding the average or the mean for each grade level. So let's see who wins on our team, the 7th graders or the 8th graders. What do you think? All right, so I am going to show this as, instead of 1 plus 1 plus 1, so on, I'm going to say 1 times 1, 2, 3, 5 dots plus 2 times 4 dots plus 3 times 2 dots plus 5 times 2 dots plus 1, 7, and 1, 8. Okay, so if we figure out that total, this is going to give me 44. And then we're going to divide that number by, let's see, how many numbers did we add here? 15. 15 total dots. Hopefully that's correct. Nobody to double check my work here. And so when I divide, I'm getting 2.93 repeating is my mean. Okay, so about 3 books is the average for 7th grade, just under 3. All right, let's do the same thing for 8th grade. So 1 plus 2 times 4 plus 3 times 3 plus 4 times 2 plus 5 times 2 plus a 6 plus a 7. Okay, so let's get that total. Should be 49. And we're going to divide by, let's see, how many dots for 8th grade? 14. Okay, so my average for the 8th graders is 3.5. Oh, they beat you guys just by a little bit. Okay, part B. How does the median number of books read for each grade level compare to the mean? All right, so we're being asked to find the median for each and then state whether it is more or less than the mean that we just found. Okay, so let's, again, we're going to do 7th grade and 8th grade here. Get down, Damon. My dog wants some attention. All right, so we are going to have to cross off to find our middle here. Let me get a different color again. Okay, so I'm going to start with 7th grade, and I'm going to cross off from the ends. I'm going to say this one with this one with this one. So I'm getting that 2 is my median for 7th grade. Leave that up there for a second. Remember, you can always pause the video if I'm going too quickly for you. Some people like to watch it and then try it on their own. Okay, so the median is 2. So how does that compare to our mean? Well, the mean was 2.93, so we could say the median is slightly less than the mean. Or we can just say the median is less, however you want to phrase it. Okay, so we are going to do the same thing for 8th grade. So let's go back and let's start crossing off from the ends and find our median. Okay, so I'm getting that there are 2 in the middle, which makes sense because there was an even number of dots for 8th grade. But since they're both 3, it means that our median will be 3. Okay, so how does that compare to the mean? Again, the median is less. Okay, great. Part C, based on the range, which grade level is more consistent with the number of books read? Okay, so we talked a lot about consistency in the last lesson. And so remember, the smaller the range, the more consistent the numbers are. Okay, the greater the range means that your numbers are more spread apart, which means it's not as consistent. So let's talk about 7th grade versus, oops, I didn't mean to write grade, 7th versus 8th again. And so to get the range, we're looking for the highest number minus the lowest number. So for 7th grade, the highest number was 8 and the lowest number was 1. So that means the range for 7th grade is 7. Let's do the same thing for 8th grade. So the highest number for 8th grade was 7 and the lowest was 1, which means my range for 8th grade is 6. Okay, so the grade level that is more consistent is the one whose range is smaller. So that would be 8th grade. Not by much, very close, but it is smaller. Okay, part D. How many total blue team students were surveyed? All right, so basically we just have to say, well, it's the total of the 7th graders plus the 8th graders. So we've already counted how many dots there were when we were finding the average, and we counted that there were 15 7th graders and there were 14 8th graders, giving us a total of 29 students were surveyed. Okay, part E. What is the interquartile range for each grade level? All right, so this is a lot of work. So remember, the IQR, you have to subtract your 3rd quartile minus your 1st quartile. So we're going to do this for each grade level. All right, so we need to go back up to our 7th grade dot plot. And the first thing we need to do is we need to separate our data into two equal halves. Okay, so in 7th grade, we already used that point that I have circled as our median. So when we're splitting our data up, we're not going to include that point. Okay, it's already been used as the median point, so I'm only worrying about the rest. So if I try and figure out my how I'm going to separate this into two equal parts, I'm going to just circle because I feel like that's helpful. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to count and make sure that I have the same number of points on either side. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points there. And that is not going to be equal to this side. Let's see here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so does everybody see what just happened there? I was assuming that that point at the top was part of my first half of my data, but that is not the case because when I circled that first half, there's only 6 points there. On the other side, there's 8. So I need to change this, and I need to say these points are the first half of my data. So now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in my first half. And then these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 would be my second half. So that's why it's really important that you count after you've split it, because obviously just by looking at it didn't work out so well for me. Okay, so once you have your data split, now you can go through and start crossing off to find your quartiles. Now I'm going to start with my upper quartile, my third quartile, because I know that that comes first when I'm subtracting to find my interquartile range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross off that point with this one with this one, and this one with this one. So I am getting that 5 is my third quartile. Okay, so down below here, I'm just going to record this. 5 is my third quartile. So now I'm going to go back up and I'm going to subtract my first quartile from it. So we're going to do the same thing. We are going to cross off from the ends here. And it looks like my first quartile is 1. Okay, so going back to the bottom here, subtracting my 2 quartiles, I get an IQR of 4. Okay, so we have to do that same process for 8th grade. I know it's a lot of work, it's tedious, but as long as you're being careful and very neat, you will get it. Okay, so for 8th grade, in this particular dot plot, there were an even number of points. And so what happened was our median was between these 2 points. Okay, so when I don't actually use one of the points for my median, I have to include the ones around it in my first half and second half of my data. So this is different than the 7th grade one where we couldn't use the point that was the median. Okay, so again, let's split this up and make sure we have an equal number on both sides. So I'm just going to see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it looks like if I split it like this, and then these guys go together, I have 7 in each of my halves. Okay? All right, so we are ready to start crossing off. So it honestly doesn't matter if you start with the first quartile or the third. This one I'll start with the first. So this one, that one. Okay, so I'm getting 2 as a first quartile. Now I'm going to do the third quartile right away. and I am getting 5 for my third quartile. Okay, so I'm going to be subtracting 5 minus 2. Which is 3. Okay, so one thing that's interesting is the 8th graders have a smaller interquartile range, which kind of just, what do I want to say? It really matches up with the fact that we got a smaller range for 8th grade also. So it kind of verifies that 8th grade was indeed more consistent with the number of books read. So it's nice when those two numbers kind of show the same thing. All right, you guys are doing amazing for hanging in there. Let's go to the last page. Okay, so example 4. The dot plot below shows the grades students received on a Grammar Monday test in Mrs. Storozinski's class. What is the median of the data? All right, so holy cow, there are a lot of points here. So we are going to find the middle, and I am going to be quiet so you guys can try this at home, and then we'll compare. All right, if you're ready, I am getting a median of 85. So I got 1 point in the middle, which means there must be an odd number of points here. All right, part B is define the interquartile range. All right, so again, we are going to need to split our data in half. Now, since one of those points was the median, we're not going to use that when we split our data in half. Okay, so I'm just going to take a guess here, and then I'm going to count and confirm my guess. But I think that might be my first half. Let's see. So I'm getting 14 points for that first half, and 14 for my second half. So it looks like I am good to go. I don't know if you guys like when I box all these in, but I guess I will just in case. Okay, so there's my 2 halves. So in order to find our interquartile range, we're going to have to find our first and third quartiles. So we're looking for the middle of our first half. So again, I'll be quiet so you guys can try it at home. Okay, so for the first half of the data, I'm getting that there's 2 points in the middle, both of them being 83, so I know my first quartile is 83. Okay, let's do the same thing for the second half. I'm also getting 2 in the middle for the second half at 87. All right, so now that I know my 2 quartiles, 87 minus 83, giving us an interquartile range of 4. All right, awesome job. We have one more example. Example 5. The heights of players on 2 school teams are shown on the dot plots below. So we have the basketball team versus the wrestling team and the players' heights in inches for each. And they need us to figure out what is the median height for each team. All right, so we can do that. Not as many dots this time, shouldn't take as long. All right, so I am getting that there are 2 points in the middle for the basketball team. And so remember, in order to find that middle, we're going to take the average. So I'm just going to write here for the basketball team, we're going to have to do 66 plus 67 divided by 2, which many of you will just know it's 66.5. All right, and let's do the same thing for wrestling. Let's find out what that median is. All right, so we have an even number here also, but both of them are 63, which means our median is 63. Okay, last question. Based on the interquartile range for each team, which team has more consistent heights? Okay, so there's that consistency question again. So we're looking for which team has the smaller interquartile range. That means that the heights are more consistent. Okay, so I'm just going to write this out. Basketball versus wrestling. All right, so let's go back to our dot plots, and we need to split our data in half. This should be a little easier because there's not as many points here. So I am going to be looking at these 3 versus these 3. Okay, so when I'm crossing off, I can see that I have 3 on either side. So it looks like my first quartile is 65. And my third quartile, is 67. So for my interquartile range, I have 67 minus 65 for an IQR of 2. All right, let's do the same thing for the wrestling team. Oop, I forgot to split my data. Oh my goodness, I just went crazy, started crossing off. All right, back it up. Oh, jeez. Okay, so I have to split my data. I'm sorry. So those 3 with those 3. All right, now I'm ready to start crossing off. So it looks like I'm getting a first quartile of 62 and a third quartile of 64. 64 minus 62 gives me an IQR of 2. Okay, so oddly enough, the IQRs are the same. So what that means is that both teams have the same consistency in their heights. So we're going to say both teams have the same IQR, I'll abbreviate here. Therefore, the heights of the players have the same consistency. All right. Awesome job, guys. Thank you so much for sticking with me throughout that long lesson. I'll see you guys next time.